Hello, and welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan, where I've been practicing law now for 24 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I also frequently write for Jalopnik's sublog, The Garage, and from time to time for Opposite Lock. I also write books and magazine articles when I have the time. Today we're going to talk about what happens when your brand new car gets a rebuilt engine. I get these phone calls a lot at my office where someone says, you know, I got a brand new car, I've been driving it for a little while, and the engine exploded. Or the transmission is scattered, which is what engineers call it. It's a euphemism for transmission failure where parts escape the transmission housing. So if something big and bad like that happens to your brand new car, you take it back to the dealership, and a lot of people say, I took it back to the dealership, and they said, oh, we're not going to give you a brand new engine. We're going to give you a rebuilt engine or a remanufactured engine. And people freak out about this. And there's a couple things you need to know when they're trying to give you a rebuilt or remanufactured engine. Under warranty, this might be completely legal. It might be all you're entitled to, and quite frankly, it might not be as bad as you think. But we have to understand the transaction from the top all the way down. So I'm going to explain to you what happens when they put a rebuilt or remanufactured engine or transmission in your car under warranty, okay? So you got a brand new car, you drive it off the lot, on the way home the engine explodes or the transmission scatters, okay? It's towed back to the dealership. I've had a lot of people say, well, Steve, if I spent $50,000 in this car and the engine explodes the day I got it, don't I get a new car? And I got news for you. The lemon law in most states says that you have to give them an opportunity to repair anything that goes wrong with the vehicle under warranty. And so most times they get 30 days or 25 days to fix the transmission or engine. And if they can't fix it in that time frame, yeah, they may have to give you a new car. But if they can fix it in that time frame, which they almost always can, they're entitled to do whatever the warranty says they have to do. And here's the problem. If you go and read your owner's manual and your warranty booklets today, you will see that they're not required to give you a new engine or a new transmission or any new parts, for that matter, on your car. They can give you rebuilt or remanufactured parts. So I wrote an article about this a while back for Jalopnik, and I pointed this out, and again, people were freaking out saying, no, that can't be the case. So I went and found the owner's manuals for a couple different car companies. So for instance, Honda, okay? Honda's warranty booklet says specifically, and I'm quoting here, American Honda may use factory remanufactured parts or parts of like-kind quality rather than new parts for some warranty repairs. They specifically say they don't have to use new parts on your car, okay? Here's what Volvo says. Parts will be repaired or replaced by an authorized Volvo retailer only using genuine Volvo new or remanufactured parts or software at Volvo's discretion. Now, I'm curious to know what remanufactured software is, but that's another story altogether. And then finally, Mercedes-Benz. For those of you who think that if you spend top dollar on a car, you're going to get some kind of different treatment, you don't. Mercedes-Benz says in case of defective assemblies, factory rebuilt units can be used in exchange instead of the repair. The replaced defective parts or assemblies shall become the property of Mercedes-Benz USA, and warranty repairs do not constitute an extension of the original warranty period for the vehicle or part thereof. Blah, 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 blah. Obviously written by attorneys in Germany, okay? But the point is that every car company out there reserves the right to repair your vehicle using rebuilt or remanufactured parts. They do not have to use brand new parts. And people, when they hear this, are shocked. But like I said, when you bought the car, in the glove box was a booklet that contained this language. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, but it always does because no one reads all that stuff. And as if you're a frequent listener of this show, you know that one of my mantras is you need to read everything. But the other mantra is no one ever does. So you should familiarize yourself with your warranty booklet now, just so this doesn't come as a surprise to you. But you also need to remember something about this. Rebuilt or remanufactured parts aren't necessarily bad, okay? So here's the scenario. You're driving down the road and your engine explodes, okay? Something was assembled bad at the factory and the engine explodes, okay? So your engine has now been lunched, okay, is what we call it. That's a term of art. And you get the vehicle towed back to the dealership and they yank your engine out, okay? That's the old engine. That old engine will get sent back, as one of those warranties actually said, we get to keep the old parts, and this is why. They'll take that engine back to the factory, or somebody who's contracted with the factory to do this, and they will have the engine torn down. And if the engine is salvageable, in other words, if the engine block is still in one piece, for instance, they will then rebuild the engine to the manufacturer's specifications. But meanwhile, they're not going to give you this engine back. They're going to just take one off the shelf and put that one in your car. But the one on the shelf is one that was in your car's situation not too long ago, okay? So these engines don't go to junkyards. They get rebuilt if they can. Now, obviously, if your engine failed and it split in half and, you know, everything was destroyed, they might not be able to salvage it. But a lot of times they can salvage a good portion of the item. The same is probably true of transmissions. The transmission fails internally, they might just yank the whole thing out, drop in a remanufactured one, and then take out the old one and have it rebuilt someplace. Now, here is why this is actually not that bad of a thing. The other option, besides giving you a new engine, would be to have the dealership do the repair for you. And I've had people tell me, they say, Steve, why don't we just have the dealership pull my engine out and have them rebuild it, okay? And I always explain to people and say, you're better off with the remanufactured engine, because the remanufactured engine is being done someplace where they're doing lots of these, okay? So I know it's a scary concept that Mercedes-Benz has so many engine failures, they've got somebody someplace doing nothing but rebuilding engines, but that's probably the case. Because if you put hundreds of thousands of products in the stream of commerce, we know they can't all be perfect. And so there will be failures. Some percentage of them will be bad. And whatever that percentage is, those are the products that are being rebuilt. So someplace, somewhere, is a guy whose job it is to oversee the remanufacturing and rebuilding of these engines that failed in whatever type of car it is that you're driving. Those people are rebuilding and remanufacturing these engines all day long, day in and day out, and then they're putting them back into the stream of commerce. Those engines, having been done by somebody who's got more experience doing it, they're doing it to factory specs, I guarantee you they're doing better work than the average technician at the average car dealership. Now, I don't mean to offend the technicians at the car dealerships, but many of them will admit this. If you simply open up the phone book, and if you don't know what that is, ask your grandparents, but open up the phone book and just point at one and point at a Ford dealer or a GM dealer or a Chrysler dealer or the Mercedes-Benz dealer at random, okay? And then go to that dealer, and if you could somehow, using a crystal ball or some kind of magical device, determine the skill levels of every single technician there, the odds of them having a guy on their staff who can rebuild the engine as good as the people who are doing it for the factory is not very good, okay? There might be a guy. I'm here to tell you that in 24 years of doing lemon law, I've gotten to know the zone reps and other factory representatives from the big three very, very well. I've gotten to know the attorneys very, very well. And they've all told me this, that if you're in a particular region of the country and you've got a major catastrophic failure of your car, engine, transmission, electrical, whatever it might be, that they'll say, by the way, if you're in the Detroit area, go to this dealer for engine, but not this dealer. Transmissions, go to this dealer, not this dealer. I've even heard them say for paint, go to this dealer, not this dealer. Everybody knows that these kinds of skills are not widespread. Not every dealership in America has got people on the staff who can rebuild engines as good as the people can who are doing it for the factory, okay? So if you're offered the choice about taking a reman off the shelf and dropping it in your car, or having your engine yanked and rebuilt on the back bench at the local shop, take the reman off the shelf. Guaranteed it's going to be better 99 times out of 100. And most of the technicians I know will even tell me that that's true, and they'll tell you that it's true, especially if I say your choice is at random to simply grab a dealer and have some guy on their staff rebuild it, okay? Again, don't get me wrong. Many dealerships have got a guy who can do it, but you don't know which dealerships those are, and you don't know which guy it is. And they're never going to tell you that. They're not going to say, by the way, we got a guy who's not that good, okay? They might have a guy. He might be okay, but you're not going to find out until later when you're driving down the road and your engine fails again. Which, by the way, in case you're curious, that's where my cases come from, okay? I get the lemon law cases when the vehicles can't be repaired after 3 or 4 repair attempts. And those repairs are what's being attempted by the dealerships. Okay, they got some guy who's been trying over and over again, and he's failing to rebuild the engine. So you're better off with the off-the-shelf reman or remanufactured engine or transmission or whatever it might be. And this is extremely common in the industry, by the way, for those of you who don't know. Whenever you get a part at the parts store, whether it's a water pump or an alternator or a differential or whatever it might be, when you go in and buy a part, you'll often have to put money down on what they call a core deposit. And the core deposit is money you put down that guarantees them that you're going to bring in the old one. So in other words, you go in and you say, I want a new alternator. Well, they give you a remanufactured alternator. And then what happens is you change the alternator and then you bring your old one back and you give it to them. The reason they want it is they send it back to the alternator place and they get a credit for that. And the alternator place then rebuilds that alternator. They remanufacture the alternator because there's a couple pieces on the alternator that last forever, like the housing. And why waste that? So the same is true of the transmission, the same is true with an engine, okay? So this is common in the industry. It's something they've been doing for decades, and it's not going to hurt you. There's something else you need to know, and this is one of those things that I've confirmed this with engineers, technicians, mechanics, people who work for the factories, that if you take an engine, okay, brand new engine, it'll have a break-in period, and that's why they tell you to mellow out on your car for the first 500 or 1,000 miles you drive your car. Don't go crazy on it because the engine's breaking in. And one of the things that happens during the break-in process is the first few times it cycles through the hot, cold, the engine, every time metal gets hot, it expands. When it gets cold, it contracts. And that cycling process, they refer to this as it seasons the block. It seasons the block. The block eventually settles down. And anyone will tell you that if you were to take the engine block, if you could magically wave a magic wand and pull the engine block, just the block, out of a car that's been treated well and driven well for 50,000 miles and compare it to the engine block pulled out of a brand new car, the engine block in the 50,000 mile car has been seasoned and is actually, it's kind of counterintuitive, but it's actually higher quality than the original engine block because it hasn't gone, the original one, the new one hasn't gone through that process yet. So you'd actually prefer to have a remanufactured engine if in fact it's got a seasoned block in it, which it very well could have. Because not every engine failure that gets remanufactured comes from an engine that was, a failure at 1,000 miles. It may have failed at 25,000 miles or 40,000 miles. They yank the engine out, they send it back, it's remanufactured, and now it's got a seasoned block. I've spoken to guys who said, specifically, if I had a choice, I'd take the seasoned block, remanufactured engine any day of the week. Any day of the week over a brand new one. But I also have to tell you that once in a while, even though the manufacturers are allowed to if they want to, they might put a brand new engine or transmission back in your car. And the reason they'll do that, and they won't necessarily tell you this, but that's because they often at the beginning of the life cycle of a particular car don't have remanufactured engines yet. So let's suppose they launch a new car and it's got some wacky new engine that hasn't been on the market yet. And you buy one of the first ones out and the engine fails. Well, yours might be the one that's got to get put in the stream of commerce as a remanufactured engine. And so they may actually have to give you a new one. So it does happen that you can get a new one, but it's not terribly common. And if you've got some engine that's been in 1 million cars, that's been on the road for decades, okay, and there are engines out there like that, the odds are hugely in favor of the fact that you're simply going to get a remanufactured engine or a rebuilt engine, but you're not going to get a brand new engine. So that is what happens. Now, the other thing that people want to argue about, they say, well, Steve, here's the problem I've got. I buy a brand new car, spend $50,000 on it, and I was hoping to keep it for a while, but then I was going to sell it, and I take very good care of my cars, and my goal is that I'm hoping to recoup a lot of my investment because the car will have some value to it, and when I sell it used, the fact that I took such great care of it means that it's worth more money. So if I get this engine replaced with a remanufactured engine, isn't my car worth less? And you know something? That is a tough call because everyone knows that nowadays Carfax picks up some information but not other information. So there's a good chance that someone's going to pull a Carfax on your car and it's going to go, yeah, major engine repair at 9,000 miles. And that puts up two red flags in the minds of the buyer. Number one is vehicles had an engine replacement. You know, they got to hope that it was done properly. But number two, why did the engine fail? Were you beaten on the car, or was it built wrong? And there's no way to tell that. I mean, you're going to, swear up and down, no, it failed because it was assembled wrong at the factory. But the buyer is going to assume that you're just saying that because that's what a seller is going to say. He's never going to admit, oh yeah, I let my 14-year-old boy drive it around the circle drive out front, and he blew the engine because he was goofing off. I mean, yeah, you're not going to say that. So the red flags go up in the minds of the buyer, and you might get less money for it. On the other hand, I actually know people who've bought vehicles, and my brother bought a GMC truck from a guy that had 90,000 miles on it. And the guy goes, I got good news for you. And my brother goes, what's that? And he pulls up the repair order and shows it to me. He goes, I just got the engine replaced 5,000 or 10,000 miles ago, and here's the proof. So while the truck has got 90,000 miles on it, the engine's only got 5,000 or 10,000 on it. My brother told me, he goes, Steve, because it was like Christmas. Because I had priced the truck as if it had a 90,000 mile engine in it, and it turns out I got this almost brand new engine. And he wound up driving that truck for years. And I'm not making this up. When he sold the truck, the body was rusting off of it like something you'd see in a cartoon, but the engine and transmission were still going strong. Okay, that engine is probably out there today still running. Okay, it's one of those things. And my brother said it was the greatest thing ever. So in some situations, it actually improves the value of the vehicle. But I understand that in most people's minds, especially when it happens at a low mileage situation, that it's going to devalue the car some. People say, well, can I sue the manufacturer for that? And I say, unfortunately, I don't think so, at least not in Michigan. The theory, I guess, would be some kind of diminished value claim. But the problem you've got is the warranty allows them to do that. And the warranty is a form of an agreement or a contract almost, where when you buy the car, you say, I'm buying the car and I'm buying the warranty. And they're saying, great, here's the warranty. And they give you a description of the warranty, and it's in your warranty booklet. If you didn't like that warranty, you didn't have to buy that car. And I know that most people are going to say, but I didn't know this information was in the warranty, and that gets us back to how, well, you're supposed to understand every agreement you enter. If you sign a document, you understood it. If you buy something and someone says, here's all the terms, you're agreeing to those terms, or you don't buy the thing. It's, no one's got a gun to your head saying you've got to buy that Volvo with the warranty booklet that says, by the way, we can replace parts inside the engine, transmission, wherever, with rebuilt or remanufactured parts at our discretion. So again, it is their discretion. They're allowed to do it. It might not be that bad of a thing, but keep in mind your brand new car, no matter how young it is, catastrophic failure, your brand new car might get itself a rebuilt or remanufactured engine instead of a brand new one. And again, it ain't against the law. Sorry to tell you. Questions or comments, feel free to fire them my way at lehtoslaw.com. That's my website. You can find my email address, my phone number, whatever you want to do, pictures of me, other videos, other podcasts, you name it, it's all there, lehtoslaw.com. I'm also on Twitter at Steve Lehto, at SteveLehto. And I'm also on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.